Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to break down the Aberdeen Ironbirds 2025 season, which will go down as their last as an Orioles affiliate. And with the Ironbirds this year, the pitching staff could be interesting at points. And while there were some highs in the offense, there were also a lot of struggles. Ultimately, the Ironbirds finished the season 57-72, but rather than focus on the wins and losses, we want to focus more on some of the individual players and how they performed. And we're going to, just as we have in our other recaps of the 2025 seasons, look at the hitters and the pitchers from this roster and break it down. In our last episode, we broke down the Delmarva Shorebirds, and we started with the pitchers. This time around, I want to start with the hitters. And the big storyline coming into this season for the Ironbirds was the presence of the 2024 draft picks in their first full season of pro ball. In particular, all eyes were on Ethan Anderson, Austin O'Verne, Vance Honeycutt, and Griff O'Farrell to see what they could do. O'Verne had a little bit of a tough start, but ended up getting hot, was promoted to Chesapeake. He's performed pretty well there. O'Farrell struggled for months, but then caught on in July. He also earned a promotion to Double-A. Ethan Anderson had his peaks and valleys this year, but overall finished up with a solid season. The same really can't be said, though, for Vance Honeycutt, whose final line in 101 games for the Ironbirds this season included a 171 batting average, a 559 OPS, and 178 strikeouts. Now, I feel like at this point, when we're talking about Honeycutt, the thought is always in the back of my head, like, are we piling on? Which I don't want to do, but we also know what the stats showed this year. And we could, watch the games night in and night out and really see the struggles that he had this year. He's still on our top 50 prospects list, but he's dropped considerably from where he was at the beginning of the year. And so, Nick, I want to start with you here with Honeycutt. This was a really tough year. There's no getting around that. Just kind of give us your thoughts on where the problems were for him this season.
Oh, man. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned like not wanting to pile on him there, because I had the same thought coming into tonight. Like he had that good week, showed some signs of life, but then he flatlined again. And yeah, I don't want to continue to beat the man while he's down. It wasn't a good year. It was awful. Very little power, defense. A lot of the tools that shined when he was at UNC that made him such an intriguing prospect just never showed up for the most part this year. Like, there's no sugarcoating at all. And if you look at some quotes that came out, I think it was last week, from his season and from himself, from Matt Blood, from the coaching staff in Aberdeen, no one is sugarcoating this season at all. No one's trying to twist the season into something positive. I think everybody is very straightforward. I think Vance Honeycutt himself said this year slapped him in the face. And Matt Blood and the coach staff in Aberdeen all kind of agreed that this was not a good year, and for various different reasons. Blood's quotes were interesting because they essentially said, like, look at the pool of players that were available in that draft class. And they decided to take the risk on Honeycutt, because this is how I'm taking Blood's quote. So maybe I'm wrong here, but the way I read it was the pool of options wasn't very good. So they said, let's just shoot for the moon with Honeycutt. I also think that explains a lot the Griff O'Farrell pick. Later on, we talked about how much we would probably really love Griff O'Farrell pick if it was the 4th round or the 5th round even. But was he the PPI pick? That was a little extreme. I think that kind of fits that into that quote as well. Like, they just didn't like the way this class shook out, and so they took with what they could. But apparently there was a lot of quotes about him reportedly working on multiple different setups to get his timing down, went to the toe tap, goes on the IL, kept working on the toe tap, and he had that good week. And then the part that got me in that interview, that article, was that he, quote, started feeling the pressure again. After 1 week, it's clicking. It's working. Whatever you're doing with the toe tap and whatever you worked on when you were on the IL for the injury, it looks like it's working. I know it was against a Nationals affiliate. I don't care. It was still against professional pitchers down there. And then to starting to feel the pressure again. I think my biggest concern now is that it's like, is he going to be able to get over that mental block at this point? I don't know. Maybe a hard reset this offseason, completely get away from it. Maybe that helps. But the part that is more concerning to me after reading that was not so much the mechanical stuff. The tools are in there. Clearly, they were just there last year at UNC. But it's like this mental block he has on. That's a lot more difficult to overcome.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Just the numbers 75 WRC plus. The thing for me is he had a 171 batting average, but 309 BABIP. So you can't really point to anything for bad luck. Almost 41% strikeout rate. The only positive thing is that he walked almost 13% of the time. Yeah, I don't want to pile on either. Obviously, still good defender in center field, good arm, 32 stolen bases. So tools are still there. He's just going to have the offseason of a lifetime, and he'll probably have to repeat high A. And Frederick will help him, I'm sure, at least from a mental standpoint. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to write him off as far as like his first full professional season, but we're certainly in lowered expectations dramatically. He's not on my top 50 until I see something more, but yeah, obviously couldn't be more disappointing than him. If we're just going to touch on like Griff O'Farrell, Ethan Anderson, a couple other guys from the 2024 draft class who maybe didn't have the success we were hoping for this season. I think Griff O'Farrell, he is a guy I feel like maybe some bad luck. 263 BABIP. He still ultimately ended up with a 91 WRC plus, and that's after like a 2 for 32 slump to end his time there before being promoted. 15% strikeout rate, doesn't really strike out. Not going to have power, but he does walk 11.2%. So, like you said, if he was just a few rounds later, that pick looks completely fine. And Anderson, I think, was battling some kind of injury for a vast majority of the season because he ultimately ends up really strong in high A, 257 batting average, 109 WRC plus, thanks to a 693 OPS. Only struck out 18% of the time while walking 11. And yeah, I think it's a mixed bag. Honeycutt kind of drags it down a little bit, unfortunately for him, but I think ultimately maybe not quite as bad at the end of the day as we thought halfway through the season.
Yeah, Anderson's worth pointing out had a fantastic August before getting promoted to Chesapeake. And, you know, the numbers so far in Double-A for him haven't been great, but this is also that time of the year where I don't think you're really concerned about what a player does over a short time period at a new level because we're just down in the final weeks of this year. This is about him being able to get his feet wet and get ready for next year. With O'Farrell, I think that we know what is going to be the difference maker for him, and that is that he has to hit the ball hard enough to have success because he's never going to be a power hitter. But there's some things that you like in his game offensively, mainly that he's got pretty good control of the strike zone. He rarely ever strikes out. So he can make contact with the baseball, but if he's not hitting the ball hard, he's going to run into some problems. And it seemed like that was happening a lot early in the year. So I'm curious to see what goes into his offseason because I think with him, we have a pretty clear understanding of if he can hit just enough, he probably has a fairly high floor, strong upper level organizational depth as an infielder, perhaps a utility player at the major league level who can play a good shortstop, or if the bat doesn't come around, he's one of those infielders that sticks around because he can play shortstop, but never gets past Double-A or maybe being an organizational piece in Triple-A.
It's interesting. The defense is legit. Like he's really good up the middle, second base, shortstop, high baseball IQ. Like I saw him when I was there in person, made a really heady play going home on a ground ball. Yeah, I feel like he's like maybe a Luis Vasquez type, who's just now at his age 25-year-old season, getting a little bit of taste in the major leagues. So, yeah, I think, again, like exactly like you said, high floor. I think he'll definitely make it to AAA. see if he can get past that. If he does, it's probably as a reserve infielder, unless he's on like the Angels or something or another rebuilding team. But I think I think he'll end up being solid depth to have. I don't think he's going to be quite as bad as Anthony Servideo ended up being, or in that range. But Carter Young, maybe. I think he's a little bit better than that. So hope for a bounce back. He's off to a really good start in his first week of Double-A. We'll say that.
Is he like better Mason McCoy? Remember that night? Like, do not look at Mason. Don't look at Mason.
Played in the majors, like a week ago.
He's an up and down guy for the Padres last couple of years. Do not look at Mason McCoy's AAA stats with El Paso and tell me that's who Mason McCoy is, because that is not who Mason McCoy is. He's Ken Griffey Jr. in over there on the West Coast. Everybody is down there. Yeah, he went to the PCL. So I'm going down the Mason McCoy rabbit hole here. 1, 2, 3. In 4 years in the Orioles system, he hit 18 home runs across 4 seasons and every level. He goes to the PCL for the first time in 2022, hits 21 home runs. That's not Mason McCoy, but a good defender and a guy who's just be Mr. Reliable. That's just, don't try to hit a home run at all. We don't need you to hit a single home run. Just be Mr. Reliable. Ethan Anderson, I'm still super intrigued. You mentioned he had a really good August. It was a great August. He had a great April as well. OPS over 800, hit almost 300. And then May was not good. June, only 7 games. So yeah, I think he was probably hurting in May. Finally went on the IL and missed most of the month of June. Started to heat back up in July. Great August. Then gets promoted. Good finish to the year. And he's switch hitter, as he's switch hitting all year as well. So maybe like it was a 567 OPS versus lefties, 704 OPS versus righties. Maybe ditch switch hitting. I'm still a big believer that he was learning, putting in a lot of work behind the plate. And so maybe injury and increased work behind the plate and learning to be a catcher, that took the toll on the bat as well. And maybe next year, if it's, we'll see if he's more behind the plate or more in the outfield. What do they do with him defensively? Do they get him to ditch switch hitting? See if some of those changes get made. But I'm pretty excited to see what he can do in Double-A next year, because he's, again, in that first taste he had last year after the draft, he was among the best as far as the college hitters goes. In their first taste of the pros, as far as swing decisions and quality of contact, he was fantastic. So I think that's still in there for him.
It's also worth noting he's only 21 still today. Like, he's pretty young for that draft class. And in Double-A, he's batting 176, but he's got a 211 BABIP, and it's only 59 plate appearances. He's actually walking 12% of the time, striking out 20% of the time. So nothing really has changed under the hood other than some bad luck with some batted ball. And if 2 or 3 hits fall in with that limited sample size, it can make things look a lot better. So, yeah, I'm still pretty high on Anderson overall.
I want to go over Vern for a moment, because I touched on him as I was introducing this segment, but we haven't really taken a look at the numbers yet. O'Vern got off to a little bit of a slow start this year. Some of that perhaps caused by a hand injury that he had early in the season that caused him to miss about a week. But then he really settled in and put up good numbers at high A. 43 steals in 84 games to go with 8 home runs, a 127 WRC plus. And while he did strike out 28% of the time, he also walked 15.5% of the time. We knew coming into this year that O'Vern was a raw player. There were a lot of questions about the hit tool during his time at USC. But you can see the athleticism taking shape here. This is a player that has 270 grade tools with his speed and his defense. I thought that, especially for the environment that he was in Aberdeen, which we know can be tough on hitters, he did a pretty good job this year of translating more of that raw power into in-game power. And he's up in Chesapeake now. He's had a little bit more of a sample size than Ethan Anderson has, 25 games as of this recording. And I think you look at his Double-A numbers and say he's at least holding his own, if not a little bit better than that. So if you're looking for a real positive out of last year's draft class, especially with the higher picks, I think that you can take O'Vern's season as a win, but I'm curious to hear what you guys have to think.
Huge win. to me, I think he broke out this year. Quite honestly, maybe a little bit under the radar for a breakout, but I think he's really good. He's only going to get better. He just turned 22 in May, so yeah, he'll be 22 to start next season. Lowered his strikeout rate almost 5% from high A to double A. I think he's just a guy that's getting better and better as the season goes on. 111 WRC plus in his time in double A after 127 in high A. He's 18 steals and 19 attempts for double A, giving him 61 total on the season, 12 home runs. I think he's 5-tool player. He's not far behind Bradfield as far as center field defense, in my opinion, and a much better arm. So as long as he's focusing on baseball solely which obviously he's going to be, and continues to develop, I think he's got a huge up arrow and could be knocking on the door by the start of 2027.
61 stolen bases in 69 attempts. Just fantastic year on the bases. And when you look at the double A numbers and you see the strikeout rate, which it did go down 28% to 23%, but you see that walk rate went from 15.5% down to 5%. I'm not concerned about that at all, because if you look at his overall swing percentage, it was 41% in Aberdeen. It's 53% in double A. So he's just going up hacking with the Bay Sox right now. He is being much more aggressive so far in this small sample, and it's working up to this point. Contact rate is up. Yeah, he's swinging and missing a little bit more, but overall the strikeout rate is down. I'd love to be able to have like a better picture of the batted ball stuff and everything at the plate to get a better idea. But I would imagine if we were able to see those numbers and graphs and charts that the Orioles are looking at, I would bet that they're looking at his double A numbers in these 25 games, and they are pretty ecstatic about what they're seeing with Austin O'Verne. Yeah, it's pretty. You're going to have O'Verne and Bradfield potentially at some point in that Norfolk outfield next year, which is going to be a lot of fun.
An outfield of Fabian, O'Verne, Bradfield, and Trimble as the fourth. That's pretty good defense on top of what they can do at the plate.
And this is a backtrack from the article that Nick mentioned earlier about Vance Honeycutt was from Jacob Calvin Meyer at the Baltimore Sun, if anybody has not had a chance to check that out yet. And there's a lot that we could dive into with the hitters. I think we really touched on the bigger names already, but you look at someone like Thomas Sosa, a little bit of a weird year at Aberdeen because he missed so much time with an injury, and I think we'll talk about him a lot more when we recap the Bay Sox season. But what else stood out to you guys, good or bad, from Aberdeen's lineup before we move over to the pitching staff?
I want to give a big shout out to Anderson De Los Santos, who is still only 21 years old, but my guy had a 121 WRC plus in Aberdeen this season, and that's a little misleading. When he batted 230 with the 721 OPS, I think he went like 3 for 3 with the walk in his final game of the season. Came on strong late, but that's just the hitting environment plus just what we know from the view that those guys have when they're hitting with I forget the term, but yeah, it's really strong season for him considering he had a 14.4% walk rate, obviously really good, but he lowered his strikeout rate from 31.4% in Aberdeen last year to 21.8% and increased his ISO by 50 points. Yeah, I'm just really pleasantly surprised that I thought he might have been a guy that, showed that early potential and we're like, this could be a breakout guy, and then he kind of just fades away. But no, I actually think he looks solid at third base too. Could be third base, first base. I think there's still something here. I'm not giving up on Anderson De Los Santos.
Big guy, hits the ball hard. Always rooted for him. I mean, some other guys. I think we touched on Cuevas with Delmarva, but I'm still going into next year optimistic about Ellis Cuevas. He should start in Frederick. Only 20 years old. Don't park right outside that right field wall at Frederick games if you're going next year, because I think Cuevas is going to be shooting for some windshields out there with that left-handed power. I'm gonna. This is weird, but in random, I'm a Colin Tuft guy. I think I might be the only person in the world outside of like his mom and dad. I don't care. I've always had the weird affinity for catchers of this type. So yeah, I think he's a guy I'm going to be paying attention to next year. I know he's like 85th on the depth chart as far as catchers are concerned in this organization, but still, I think he had a pretty solid year. And then the other only is Leandro Arias, disappointing. Like Aaron Estrada, I think we'll save him for Bowie, but again, most slept-on prospect in the system. It's just their flip is just fascinating. Every time I think about these two, it's Arias came in as the guy with all the power. Estrada, you're hoping is going to be that scrappy contact guy, and now Estrada is the power hitting utility guy in Double-A. And Arias, I don't know what the injury was, but he has went on the IL I think a couple weeks ago and never returned. He's had a tough time. It's okay contact, strikeout, walk numbers are solid, just not really producing. There's really hasn't been any power to speak of. That was so highly touted. You see Fangraphs. I remember Fangraphs was right after he signed. They put him like top 10 or top 15. They were very aggressive on Arias. They've really soured on him as well. I think there are some notes there. It's like below average hard hit rates. So yeah, it's unfortunate for Arias. Didn't seem to pan out. He can come back next year and see if he can become a utility kind of depth option. But yeah, I think he was a big disappointment for me this year.
Certainly a big disappointment, but actually just looking at it, I don't think it's as bad as it seems. Like he's still only 20. He still plays really solid defense. If he can just add some ability, some strength to impact the ball more, like I think could make a big difference. He had an 84 WRC plus, which considering he batted 219 with a 589 OPS, that doesn't seem like it should correlate, but walked almost 11% of the time, struck out less than 17% of the time, had a 262 BABIP, so a little bit of bad luck there. Again, still disappointing no matter which way you slice it, but maybe not as disastrous as I was thinking in my head coming into tonight.
Yeah, I think with Arias, we've been hearing for years about the bat-to-ball skills, and I got my hopes up a little bit for him coming into this season based on the way he finished 2024. He got promoted to Aberdeen and actually did pretty well there. But I think that for him, the shift to Frederick could be beneficial because that is much more of a hitter's park than Aberdeen is, but he's got to stay healthy and he's got to get the time in and get the reps at the plate to try to get back on track. Let's go over the pitching staff now. And this was a fun year to follow pitchers in Aberdeen. Now, a lot of the breakouts left early in the year, whether it was Trey Gibson, Nestor Herman, Braxton Bragg, and then we're going to talk about them a lot more when we cover the Bay Sox. But you look at the pitchers that stuck around for a while. Few interesting bullpen arms with guys like Zane Barnhart, Sebastian Gongora, who we talked about a little bit on our Shorebirds recap, finished up in Aberdeen, actually had a lot of time in high A, and that's definitely a case where a pitcher's ERA is misleading. Gongora was a lot better than a pitcher with a 5.28 ERA for most of his time with the Ironbirds. So there's a lot you can cover. Also, Wellington Aracena, after the trade with the Mets, came over and looked really good with the Ironbirds. Yes, the walks were high, but 24 strikeouts in 23 innings and pumping a lot of fastball velocity in his starts. And Michael Ferret, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, had an excellent run with the Ironbirds in 16 games. So there's a lot of different guys that we can highlight here for the pitching staff. But I just want to start with you, Nick. What kind of stood out to you this season?
Well, see, like a couple of guys like quick hitters. I think we talked about Chase also with the Delmarva episode. Either way, he ended in Aberdeen. That was at least nice to see. He's back with Ike Irish. I don't know. They were battery mates at Auburn. Maybe they can get together and Ike Irish can help him out this offseason. He can return next year and do a little bit more. Esel Correa, unfortunately, we didn't get to see him have a lot of run this year. He hit the IL in July and never returned. And, the minor league IL means nothing, but he was never transferred to the 60-day or full season IL. So maybe it wasn't the TJ, but a little bit more serious because it was like mid-July and he never returned. But I thought he took a real step forward this year, cut his ERA by 2 runs. Not overpowering stuff, not a high strikeout guy, but you talk about the Edgar Portis comps. I think that's another guy who kind of was on that same trajectory. So hopefully he's okay. Jacob Cravey, I thought looked a lot better out of a bullpen role. Big 6'6" guy, 6th-round pick out of Samford a couple years ago. We'll see what he looks like, what kind of role, if he can continue to excel out of the bullpen. Joe Galassi, we talked about him as well. If we could talk about a big name, though, I think it's Wellington Aracena. I'm getting super pumped about his potential. And I said in our top 50 episode, every time I watch him, I forget he's only 20 years old because he does not pitch like a 20-year-old. I think he's very mature. It looks like he goes up with each at bat with a game plan. And we have pitch data on him when he was in the Florida State League, whatever it's called, when he was with the Mets. I think it was St. Lucie. So he's pumping City 97, touching 101, 31% whiff rate with the fastball, 41% whiff rate with the cutter, his second most used offering, 113 stuff plus slider that had a 60% whiff rate, and a 2,800 RPM curveball. Like, yeah, he walked a lot of guys. We've talked about the control that he's going to have to battle, but nearly unhittable. 23 high A innings, 10 hits this year. And if you go back and read the Fangraph scouting report, it ends by saying everything he throws is hard and requires a ton of effort, making him a cleaner fit in the bullpen. There, Aracena has a chance to be a special weapon. There aren't really many other big league pitchers whose stuff bears a resemblance to Aracena's cutter-heavy mix. This future value grade is in line with that of a good setup man, which leads to, like, he is going to be Rule 5 eligible next year. And every time I feel like I post an Aracena clip, somebody asks, fast track, question mark? Like that it's just every time it's just fast track, question mark. Like, I imagine they start him in the base box rotation next year to see what he can do, see if he can get more control out of him. But I do think it's interesting that he could still start in Double A's rotation in the year in Triple A. You add him to the 40-man at the end of the offseason, keep working him as a starter. But it would be an interesting thought. Do the Orioles try to fast track him next year? Could we potentially see him on the 40-man roster by the end of next year if they put him in that bullpen role? I don't think so. I think you continue to stretch him out as a starter because that stuff was pretty special. Yeah,
that's a good point. And I think maybe 2026 could be a year of the relief prospect because I think AAA Norfolk's rotation, as long as knock on wood health, is going to be like Brandon Young, Trey Gibson, Nestor Urman, Cameron Weston, Levi Wells, and there's plenty more guys that Luis De Leon, Jerron Watts Brown, there's so many guys pushing for time. I think it's just a fact in numbers that some guys are going to have to be shifted to a bullpen role, and a guy like Aracena, man, he, like you said, he could be a real weapon there, and maybe some of these guys could be relievers for a couple years, and then you pull the trendy thing, the Michael King, the guy that went from the Yankees to the Mets that I can't think of for some reason. You can always Clay Holmes, and then you could always switch them up. If we're going to lose so and so to free agency, well, let's shift Aracena back to starting over the offseason, and I think we could see some interesting stuff on that front. But great name for him. And Cravey, I don't know what to make of Cravey. Probably, like you said, relief, but had such a poor 2024 season in Delmarva all season, and much better, as you would expect, repeating the level this season, 3.67 ERA in 68.2 innings, and then a 0.77 ERA in 23 1/3 with Aberdeen, which it's a 3.61 FIP, 3.93 FIP. So obviously, I don't think he's that guy, but an interesting arm. Juan Rojas, he got his innings in, got up to 85 innings. We've talked about him. I don't know. Again, probably going to have to go to relief at some point. 4.43 ERA, 4.25 FIP. Just walks too many, doesn't strike out enough. And Cohen Aiken, I think he really was a highlight in the first half of the season. Kind of faded away a little bit, working some relief outings the last couple of weeks. But I think you have to say, really solid overall first year for a 14th round pick out of Lindsey Wilson College, 3.70 ERA in his time with Aberdeen, 58 in the third innings. And who was the one guy I really wanted to shout out? Oh, yeah, the Altered Beast. Carter Baumler rose from his grave, and he dominated. And I think there's a very good chance he's added to the 40-man roster this offseason as he is Rule 5 eligible. He's up in Chesapeake now and has a 0 ERA in 5 2/3 innings there. But, man, he really came back as a reliever, flashed that stuff. The control was pretty good, and he stayed healthy for the most part. Again, knock on wood, but loving what we saw from Carter Baumler in 2025.
Yeah, I got to agree with you on Ballmer. I thought he was really impressive. And this is a guy that I had kind of reluctantly written off. And it was not because of the stuff that we saw when he was on the mound, because his stuff looked fantastic when he was healthy, but he just had not been healthy. And we were several years into his career. And it's like, all right, this is when he's on the mound, he's a lot of fun to watch, but when you're not getting the innings that you need and you're getting hurt as often as Ballmer does, it's hard to see a player coming out of that. But look at Hunter Harvey. And I don't know that Ballmer is the next Hunter Harvey, but it was really easy to write off Hunter Harvey. And he's settled in, and he's not an elite reliever, but he's having a nice major league career. And that's not something we would have expected during his time in the Orioles system because of how often he was getting hurt. So I think there is some hope for Carter Baumler. I'm cautiously optimistic at this stage with him.
Yeah, it's the velo's back. That's the biggest. The velo, the stuff is there with Baumler, which keeps me excited. Yeah, I guess some other guys kind of wrap up my thoughts on some Aberdeen arms. Yeah, you mentioned Cohen Aiken. It's just there's so many starters we're so excited about. You routed off some of the names there, Bob, and you still miss them.
Yep.
That's just the nature of it when we talk about those guys in the upper levels of the minor leagues. So Aiken, I don't know if there's going to be a starter role for him, but again, yeah, it's pray for health because we know there may be trades, injuries are going to happen, roles may open up, but if you have guys like Boston Bateman, Esteban Mejia behind Cohen Aiken to be excited about, so many ahead of him. Same thing like I mentioned with Evan Yates. If Cohen Aiken can become like a Houston Roth type guy in the system, you're pretty happy. Or the NAIA guy. Jack Crowder, I don't know if you guys have watched him or have more thoughts. I need to find one or two good outings to go back and watch because I will fully admit I was not on him at all. 9th round senior sign last year out of Illinois. And then when he was in Delmarva, that ERA was over 6 and opponents hit over 280 against him. 60 strikeouts, 19 walks is really good, but he just seemed like fine. And then he gets to high A, had one bad outing, but in 3 of his last 4 outings, 12 innings, 5 hits, no runs, no walks, 15 strikeouts for Jack Crowder. So I'm going to have to go back and watch him closely before I write him up over on Substack. I really like Ryan Cabarcas. I think I wrote him up as a potential AFL candidate. I threw the name out. I needed one more name, and I'm like, the Zane Barnhart, like that relief arm who gets an additional challenge. Cabarcas could be that guy, undrafted guy at Florida International, but after his promotion to Aberdeen, 24 strikeouts to 6 walks in 16 innings. He's a lot of fun, a relief arm to watch there. And Boston Bateman, I don't know if we talked about him with last week with Delmarva or not, but yeah, I talked about him a little bit on that weekly recap episode that we released on the main feed. Everybody got to listen to. So my thoughts there, just kind of left me wanting more, especially he just not able to finish hitters when he got to 2 strikes that I was hoping for this big kid. But it was one start after he was traded. He's 19 years old. He's listed at 6'8", 240. He's still a child. And there's still a belief out there that there's mixed reviews. There's a lot of belief that he's a back-end starter. Not a ton of love for his secondaries. Others see a lot more. Some people, they potentially think he's the top 1-2 pitching prospect in the system, potential strong number 2 or number 3 in the major league rotation. I don't have any hard takeaways yet, but he's a 19-year-old kid, $2.5 million arm, high school arm, who's committed to LSU. Physically, I don't think we don't fully know what he's going to be like physically when he's done growing. He's already a monster. He could be just a complete freak next year when we see him. Yeah, like I'm pretty pumped for Boston Bateman next year, but certainly a long way to go there with that arm. But a name that I think is going to be drawing a lot of fans at Frederick next year.
Definitely saw some growth plate mentions in the last few weeks in regards to Boston Bateman. Shout out again. We're still missing some names, but just shout out a couple more guys. Zane Barnhart ended the year so strong. We talked about that last week. It earned his promotion to AA to end the year. Carter Rustad, I'm sure we'll talk about him more next week with AA as well, but another great relief prospect potentially. Also, love what we've seen from Tanner Smith and Chandler Marsh so far since the trade deadline. And there was one more guy I wanted to talk about, Ben Vespi. Shout out to Ben Vespi, who secretly had a great season as an undrafted free agent. And not that a 24-year-old undrafted free agent shouldn't have some success in the lower levels of the system. But, I mean, he had a 3.02 ERA with Delmarva over 50-plus innings, and then had a 1.54 ERA in 11 2/3 innings for Aberdeen. Overall, 2.84 combined, 29.4% strikeout rate, 7.7% walk rate, 2.71 FIP. So, he's out there doing his things to get that many innings, 63 1/3 innings for a first full season out of the bullpen. Rubber arm could be useful at some point.
I know we're going to talk about him more when we recap the Bay Sox next week, but I just wanted to take a second to put into perspective how good Luis De Leon was for the Ironbirds this year. 60 innings pitched, 3.58 ERA, 2.7 FIP, a ground ball rate of 56%, and really good strikeout numbers. Struck out 69 batters in 60 innings pitched. I feel like I've been saying for years, like a broken record, that if Luis De Leon puts it all together, he is top 100 prospect material. This year, I feel like we've been seeing that, and that's despite the fact that he missed time early on in the year because of an injury. That fastball changeup combination in particular, coming from the left side, is just not something you see a whole lot of. But when he's on, he can overpower hitters, but he can also, and this is something that Nick just touched on with Boston Bateman, not being able to put hitters away sometimes. De Leon can put people away, and he's got a couple different ways he can do it. He can strike somebody out. He can induce a ground ball when he needs one. There's a lot to like with De Leon, and I just hope that he builds on this and is healthy next year, because I think we could see a huge breakout.
Yeah. I think we already did. I think he reached another gear, another level, because if you look at his last 6 appearances, and not even talking about his 2 fantastic starts to start his AA career, his last 6 appearances with Aberdeen, he had a 1.86 ERA over 29 innings, 41 strikeouts, 12 walks. That's 35.3% strikeout rate to 10.3% walk rate, 1.91 FIP. But then if you go his last 3 starts with Aberdeen, it's insane. He struck out 48.3% of batters, 11.7% walk rate, 1.22 FIP. Just absurd numbers. 29 strikeouts in 15 2/3 innings. People don't do that. It just, unless you're a special talent. So, yeah, I think Luis De Leon, I don't know what happened, what clicked suddenly from one start to the next. But, man, he's up there for me now as far as that Michael Ferret, Trey Gibson tier. I think he's quickly reached that point for me.
Yeah. And whenever I see him pitch as well as he has, I go back to, you cannot convince me that he was supposed to go to the Cardinals in the Jack Flaherty trade. They took him out after 1 inning, never hit the IL. It was at the trade deadline. It was just weird. I'm glad Zach Showalter is in St. Louis and not Louis Stalin. Zach Showalter, I just looked it up. 31 innings this year, 33 walks, 32 strikeouts. Not purely a relief arm. Not going well for Zach Showalter. Meanwhile, Luis De Leon should probably be in the conversation for top 100 overall.
We could do a whole episode on this, but did you guys find it really weird that basically immediately after the trade, the Cardinals decided Zach Showalter's relief prospect? That's it. When the Orioles have been developing him as a starter.
I don't have a lot of good things to say about the St. Louis Cardinals player development system. So, no, I'm not surprised.
And with that, now we will head into our final segment of the night. Last call brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing. And this is normally where I would tell you to be sure to check them out at 1421 Ridley Street before or after an Orioles game and to go get the Bird is a Word from the beer stand behind home plate. You should still do all of that, but you also want to make sure that on September 21st, you head to the South Baltimore Brewery District Hot Dog Race featuring Pickett or Checker Spot, Pickett, Wyco, and Mate. Mate will be the judge, while Checker Spot as Relish, Wyco as Ketchup, and Pickett participate in the live hot dog race. I had a chance to go to this. It's a lot of fun that will take place at 11 a.m. on the morning of Sunday, September 21st, outside of Pickett Brewing Company. More details to come here in the coming weeks, but certainly looking forward to that. And now we will give out our player awards for Aberdeen this season, our hitter and pitcher of the year. And both awards were unanimous, though I think in the case of the pitcher category, it was probably a tougher decision for the three of us. But let's start with our hitter of the year, Aaron Estrada. And I don't think this was particularly close. Austin O'Byrne had a strong case, but when you look at the season Estrada had, it was quite impressive. 81 games with the Ironbirds. He hit 284 with a 798 OPS, 135 WRC plus, 5 home runs, and 41 RBIs. And here's something to keep in mind with Estrada, because we've now seen this from him 2 years in a row. Estrada did not hit his first home run of the season until late May. And he still finished with 5 at high A before being promoted to double A, where he's added 5 more home runs. He's now up to 10 homers this season to go with 15 doubles and 8 triples between 2 levels. But his strong year started off at Aberdeen and pretty much wire to wire during his time with the Ironbirds, a really consistent producer in this lineup. It's no secret that the three of us have liked Estrada for a long time. I think that he kind of arrived on the scene last year, but this season proved that people need to be talking about Aaron Estrada a lot more.
Oh, yeah. And I think, honestly, just the way all the hitters in Aberdeen throughout the year performed, it just hats off to him for being able to hit 284 with a 135 WRC plus. Like, yeah, he didn't really show the power till later, but we saw in interviews, and I think it was Steve Molesky's blog, that he had hit a ball 112 this year with the Ironbirds. Maybe he's topped that, but it sounds like just from interviews somewhat recently of Kobe Perez and some other guys, like they see him as a potential future stud. Still only 20 years old, same age as some of the guys we talked about in Delmarva and Aberdeen, who still have the potential to be something. Well, Estrada's doing it at Double A now. He's got 89 plate appearances there with a 154 WRC plus. Can't say enough good things about Aaron Estrada. I thought he was going to be the next Frederick Bencosme. Well, he's already surpassed that level, and I still love Bencosme for the player he is. But Estrada, he might not have a firm position at this point in time, but the bat is going to get him into a major league lineup.
Yes, he has a 154 WRC plus in Double A. It's 22 games since that promotion, and same thing. He's hitting 309. Like same thing. It was after that Molesky interview, and you're watching him in Aberdeen. You just felt like, and maybe some of that was because the rest of the Aberdeen lineup just wasn't performing, but it felt like he was so close to a promotion. Like just start hitting the ball in the air more, and he did, and he got promoted. He's gone to Double A. Ground ball rate has continued to drop like 7-8%, more fly balls. He's pulling the ball at a career high mark right now, 46% pull rate. which is more than he's ever done. He's swinging less in AA and making a little bit more contact, a lot less swing and miss as well. So more selective at the plate. Just check for Estrada. He's taters. He doesn't like the cold weather. Like he just wants the warm weather. He wants to be hot and muggy out there, and that's when he's going to perform the best. And you know what? I'll take it. He is having a monster year.
Our pitcher of the year, meanwhile, probably comes as a little surprise. We go with Michael Ferret. And Ferret, despite missing some time with a back injury, was really impressive with the Ironbirds this season. 59 2/3 innings pitched. He had a 1.88 ERA to go along with a 2.05 FIP and a 2.88 xFIP. He also struck out 76 batters while walking just 17. Now, I will admit there was a moment where I was considering going with Luis De Leon over Ferret for this award, but Ferret's just consistent dominance of the level this season, even in spite of the injury. And an injury, by the way, he really did not have a traditional rehab buildup from. He came off the IL, went straight back to Aberdeen, and was eased in with some short starts, but we didn't have this 2 starts in the FCL, 1 in Delmarva, and then back to Aberdeen path for Ferret. He went right back there and picked up where he left off after a hot start to the season, and he's been promoted to AA. Season ended early because of an injury, but had 3 very good starts there to round things out. So Michael Ferret broke out last year with a promising first full year of pro ball and was even better this season.
Complete and utter stud. He didn't have a single bad start this year. I mean, he did give up 2 runs in 2 innings on April 29th, but he never gave up more than 3 runs the entire season, no matter the level. And he only did that twice. So that's insane consistency. And his worst start probably before the one where he got hurt in AA a week or 2 ago, 5 2/3 innings, gave up 3 runs on 6 hits, but walked 0 and struck out 8. So stud. I don't know, like just so good all year long. Wish he could have been healthier to really get the innings limit up, but doesn't matter. There's still plenty of more growth to go with him too. He still has plenty of strength to add to his 6'3" frame. I think there's more velocity to be gained. He's clearly shown comfortability spinning the ball and learning pitches. So sky's the limit.
Yeah, you guys have hit on it. We've talked about him a lot this year. If you look at the Aberdeen team stats, his 76 strikeouts were 6 more than second place in Aberdeen. It was Juan Rojas, had 70 strikeouts. Michael Ferret had 6 more strikeouts in nearly 30 fewer innings. So the dominance in high A 0.8 whip, absurd year down there. We can't say that enough.
And that does it for this episode. We will be back next week to recap the Chesapeake Bay Sox season and cover whatever other news there is in Birdland. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media accounts, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. You can read Nick's latest piece there, recapping the seasons of Luis Almeida and Joshua Lorenzo. There's also a lot more coverage over there, so be sure to check that out. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up to become a member of our community. You can join to $3, $5, or $10 levels and have access to bonus weekly shows from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list. And we will keep the content coming over there throughout the offseason. So just because the season is winding down does not mean we are slowing down here at Orioles on the Verge. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.